Hey there, welcome to the fifth episode of the Startup Experiment. We're into our second month now. Today we're going to dive into the research that I've been doing for the second app that I'm trying to create. I'm going to go over all the different competitors that I found, all the different apps that I tried, and then we're going to jump into how I did the low and medium fidelity designs for my version of the application and created some of the very basic user flows that we're going to need. Then I'm going to give a summary of some of the experiments that I've been doing in the background on my first app, the salary negotiation agent. And finally, to wrap it all up, I'm going to be talking about what I'm going to be building over the next week and what you can expect to see in next week's video. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so if you tuned into last week's episode, you'll know that I revealed the second app that I'm going to start working on here. I've got to keep the pace up if I'm going to hit 12 apps in 12 months. And this one is very fitting. It's called Micro Habits, or the 1% Better app is what I'm calling it. And as I said last week, it's really built around this book called Atomic Habits that I reread recently, where James Clear, the author, says if you get 1% better at a habit every single day, you're going to be 37 times better at that habit over the course of a year. And I think this is actually how skills actually work in real life. You're building on the progress that you built up before. So each day, if you're out there trying to get 1% better, it's going to compound and compound and compound over time. Now, I did find this graph here, which talks about a couple different growth curves in relation to population size, but I think it applies to skills too. So skills are not an exponential growth rate. They're something that you will see, maybe they'll exponentially build at the beginning, and then eventually they'll kind of plateau when they reach the carrying capacity, right? If we're talking about weightlifting, there is only so much you can do. There's only so much weight a human body can lift. And as you approach that carrying capacity, the returns for your effort are going to be less. So that's just something to keep in mind as we build out this application. Do we build it with an exponential growth curve that maybe shows a little bit unrealistic results? Or do we use a more realistic computation to accurately mimic what growing with a skill is like over the long term? I mentioned before that I was looking for a habit tracking app, and I didn't find one that I liked. Either they were going to make me pay for the application way too soon, or it wasn't simple and beautiful. It was too complex to stand up. So I went out there to try and find an application that fits the vision that I have in my head that I could download and start using. It would be great if there was something out there right now that fit what I had in my head that I could use for free or maybe a small cost. I would love to start using it, but in my research, I did not find a single application that quite fits the same concept that I'm trying to go for with this 1% better. A lot of habit tracking applications use the concept of streaks. In the everyday app here, we can see that they use beautiful colors and gradients to show their users' progress, but it relies on the concept of streaks. I see a lot of applications that have these big charts with X's filled in or dots filled in for every day that you complete the habit or the skill, but I'm not seeing anyone lay out that progress that's showing me that I am dedicating myself to something and I'm getting better and better and better at it every single time that I do it. So I took all these applications, all 22 applications that I found out there of some of the biggest habit tracking and goal tracking applications, and I ranked them. I sorted them. I looked at all the reviews. I jotted down notes as I was going along, and I've come up with a plan to make an application that fits my needs and maybe solve some of the needs that are out there of other people in the market for a habit tracking app. So one of the first things I did is the Crazy Eights exercise. I think I mentioned this before when I was doing the salary negotiation agent. We all have these ideas of what screens could look like, and it's really tough to try and take those ideas from my brain and put them down into a computer, at least for me. Even though I've been doing this for years, it's still tough to go right into Figma and create beautiful designs from the get-go. So I always like to start with a pencil and paper, and I take 8 minutes and jot down 8 ideas. If I didn't feel like I got them all out, I'll give myself more time and jot down more ideas. That is a-okay. The goal here is just to start thinking what some of these screens and features will look like inside the application. After that was done, I hit the Internet Archives to try and find examples of different portions of applications that maybe fit that vision at a little bit of higher fidelity to what I'm trying to create. So I went out to Dribbble, I went out to Maven, I went out to Pinterest, and I saved every single design that looked like something that I could possibly use within my application, or maybe I could draw inspiration from. I then moved them over to this mural board here, jotted down some notes about the things that I like and dislike about each one, and then I'm going to look to incorporate those as I start to make my medium and high fidelity screens within my app. The next step for me was going to the medium fidelity designs, and for me this means creating different flows. You might have heard the term CRUD when it comes to engineering or API design: create, read, update, delete. Make sure I get that right. But it's the same for a lot of these applications. We're not doing too many different things other than creating new habits to track. We're updating them, we're viewing them, and then maybe we were deleting them. This onboarding flow is the first thing that the user will see within the application. So I want them to sign up quickly with Google or their email. And I really want to introduce my philosophy to this 1% better to the user right away in the sign up flow so that they can see, oh, this is how this application is going to be a little bit different. These graphics are not final by any way. These were just placeholders that I'm putting in here. The copy is not the final copy that's going to go in here either. But this is just me, again, starting to think through the flow of the application a little bit more. What do I want to communicate to someone? And then once this is done, this next week, I'm going to be working on the higher fidelity, right? These are almost production ready versions of these screens with my theme and my app's visuals all built into them. So you can see it talks about how you take little steps, 1% better, to get better at something every single day. It then shows these 1% steps and kind of how we view them, right, as just actual staggered steps, when in reality that compounding is making that 1% step not a linear progression up and to the right, but it's making it something that's exponential. And if you extrapolate that out over the course of a year, you're going to be 37.8 times better at something if you get 1% better at it every single day. Then I want to dive into, okay, what is this app's philosophy, right? Here's how you can easily track the skill each day. If you miss a day, there's no penalty for that. If you miss 2 days in a row, that's when you see that skill level start to decline. That is the basic version of the algorithm I'm going to use for charting the progress that someone's going to make, but there will be some tweaks with that along the way. Then the first thing that I want the user to do is create their first skill now. So after this onboarding flow is done, it's going to drop them into that create screen. So we've got that down below here. Super simple at the moment. I want to break this out into a flow. One of the things that I found with a lot of the habit tracking apps that I tried is that it is really complicated to set up a new habit. So I want it to be really simple. I don't want to have to select a whole bunch of different things. I just want it to be easy. So here we can create the name for the skill, maybe give it an end goal date. I'm not even sure if this is needed anymore. And then I think one of the most basic things that needs to be built in there is those notifications or reminders of when to do the skill or when to track the skill. So you could either have that in the morning or evening. Maybe we can get fancy with it and do a set time, but that's further down the road. The next screen that I've got here is the track a habit screen. So this is where I have all my habits listed that I am tracking within the application. And I've got the big button right in the middle to add 1% to it each day, right? If I'm getting 1% better, I did it. Maybe if I absolutely crushed my practice that day with the skill that I'm trying to get better at, I can hit the plus 1.5% button. Or maybe it was a really mediocre day. I don't feel like I got 1% better, but I still want to give myself credit, so I'm going to give myself plus 0.5%. So this is just something, an idea that I had in my head. I don't know if this is too complicated right now. Maybe it's just plus 1% and there's no buttons on the side. Maybe it's a different interface than this too, because I'm absolutely not loving this yet, but I really haven't got deep into the design language that's going on this page yet. And then the final couple screens I have here are the view a habit. So once a habit record has been recorded, I've gotten 1% better that day, I want to see the chart show up here on the home page. So I can almost imagine that card flipping around and showing the chart on there. And you can see that you've gotten better over time. You're just adding a little bit to that as you go along. Or maybe if you dig deeper into something like piano practice here, you can see a total progress chart where you can get more details about the progress towards that habit. Again, these are kind of low, medium fidelity prototypes, so there's still a lot more to think through here and definitely a lot more to design here. But this is a great start as I progress towards those high fidelity mocks and then actually creating this application. All right, so that wraps it up for the 1% Better app. I wanted to give an update on the experiments that have been running over the last week on the first application, my salary negotiation agent idea that's out there. So A couple weeks ago, I ran a LinkedIn ad for my landing page, and you can check that video out up here if you haven't seen it yet. But it dives into how I try to get people to sign up for my salary negotiation service by using LinkedIn ads. And the first test was a little inconclusive. There were some tweaks that I needed to make to the landing page, and I also wanted to try a different ad network to see if that could possibly increase the number of signups that I got for the idea of the salary negotiation agent. So again, the hypothesis remains the same. I want to see if I can get a greater than 2% sign up for people that visit my landing page site, signing up to become a beta tester for this idea. This time, instead of running those LinkedIn ads, I ran Google ads with a $15 a day spend limit, and I did that for a 1-week runtime. Here's a sample of what one of those Google ads looked like. I really love Google Ads platform, how it allows you to iterate on different advertising headlines, slogans, paragraphs down below. I really thought some of the copy that came out of creating these ads are things that I can use on my website. So if nothing else, that was a good exercise in and of itself. If we look at some of the raw metrics here, I spent a total of $104 over that 1 week. That generated 49,900 impressions, 152 ad clicks, and 4 valid signups. Now I gotta say, this is the moment halfway through the week when I realized that my website was broken. So if we take a look at the salary negotiation agent website here, I added a couple things to the top of the page. We've got a new image on the top right that kind of shows the concept of the application. And then I added the call to action. Instead of linking to the button down below, I had it so that you can put your email in right at the top of the website above the fold. People don't have to scroll down. They don't have to click the button and be redirected down, even though that still works, right? I wanted it to work up here, but there was a bug in this site. So when people were clicking this button, it was putting in yourmail@gmail.com and sending that off to my form on the back end. So I had 4 submissions with yourmail@gmail.com. I wonder if people were just clicking the button for fun or if they were actually thinking that their email was being submitted. I quickly fixed it once I saw that those submissions were rolling in that way. And I did get 2 submissions from real people that have yourmail@gmail.com. So when we look at the numbers, they're not entirely accurate. This is a great learning experience to double check any forms that you have out there to make sure that people can't click it and send random nonsense to sign up for your item. So now this is fixed and it's ready to go and it's capturing emails the correct way. It was great to run a second week of ads for the salary negotiation agent application. And it was really great to compare the 2 different advertising platforms, LinkedIn and Google Ads, because I always thought LinkedIn would be the better one for reaching my target audience, right? People that are job hunting often spend time on LinkedIn. We can see that the total ad spend was very similar between the two, about $100. The total number of impressions was about the same, almost 50,000 for each one, 49,000, 49,900. But the clicks are wildly different. The LinkedIn ads had a picture and they called out that I'm looking for testers, so maybe that yielded more clicks right from the get-go. If we take a look at the cost per click or the click-through rate, both of those are significantly higher, almost half as much cost per click and almost twice the click-through rate for the LinkedIn ads. But the total signups were almost identical, and our sign-up rate was much better when I was running the Google ads. Does that mean that Google is sending me people that are more likely to sign up? Or is it the changes that I made to the landing page are converting people much better? I think it is the latter. While I was running my Google Ads test for the salary negotiation agent, I also thought I would test out the viability of offering negotiation as a service. My hypothesis was if I offer a salary negotiation service for people that I do myself with a money back guarantee, then people be willing to pay for that. If they're making more off this negotiation and they don't have to do it, they're willing to pay that upfront cost. So the methodology for this experiment was I ran a Fiverr gig for the last week, offering a full service salary negotiation for $245. The results on this are pretty mixed. So it cost me nothing to run this little micro experiment, but I also don't have great data from it. I don't know how many people saw this advertisement. I don't know how many people clicked on my profile or on the gig itself, and I had no signups. I think a couple things I can see here is that I have no social proof on my profile showing that I've done this before and that I've had successful negotiations for clients. I also see that there are people that do have that social proof and they're offering a lower price point for their service. I love how low stakes this was, and I think there's opportunity to keep iterating with this to see at what price point people are willing to sign up for this service. So that wraps up the 5th week of the startup experiment. I've got 2 things in flight right now. This next week I'm going to be making those high fidelity mocks for the 1% app. I'm also going to be doing a test app using a couple different technologies to see which one I am more comfortable with as I start to build out this application. And lastly, I'm going to be doing some updates to my personal site, which will allow people to better follow the progress of these different applications and startups, to see what experiments are currently running and how those experiments are currently growing. So have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye.